Hello, how are you? I'm going to be reading from this leadership book. Leadership by the author is Northouse. Leadership Northouse, Chapter 4. Very beginning, Chapter 4. What page are we? 73, possibly? Description. Behavioral approach. Description. The behavioral approach emphasizes the behavior of the leader. This distinguishes it from the trait approach in Chapter 2, which emphasizes the personality characteristics of the leader, and the skills approach, Chapter 3, which emphasizes the leader's capabilities. The behavioral approach focuses exclusively on what leaders do and why they act. In shifting the study of leadership to leader behaviors, the behavioral approach expanded the research of leadership to include the actions of leaders towards followers in various contexts. Researchers studying the behavioral approach determined that leadership is composed of two general kinds of behavior: task behaviors and relationship behaviors. Task behaviors facilitate goal accomplishment. They help group members to achieve their objective. Relationship behaviors help followers feel comfortable with themselves, with each other, and with the situation in which they find themselves. The central purpose of the behavioral approach is to explain how leaders combine these two kinds of behaviors to influence followers in their efforts to reach a goal. Many studies have been conducted to investigate the behavioral approach. Some of the first studies to be done were conducted at The Ohio State University in the late 1940s, based on the findings of Stockdale in 1948 work, which pointed to the importance of considering more than leader traits in leadership research. At about the same time, another group of researchers at the University of Michigan was conducting a series of studies that explored how leadership functioned in small groups. A third line of research was begun by Blake and Monton in the early 1960s. It explored how managers use task and relationship behaviors in the organizational setting. Although many research studies could be categorized under the heading of the behavioral approach, the Ohio State studies, the Michigan studies, and the studies by Blake and Monton in 64, 78, and 85 are strongly representative of the ideas of this approach. By looking closely at each of these groups of studies, we could draw a clear picture of the underpinnings and implications of the behavioral approach. Alright, so the Ohio State studies. A group of researchers at Ohio State believed that the results of studying leadership as a personality trait seemed fruitless and decided to analyze how individuals acted when they were leading a group or an organization. This analysis was conducted by having followers complete questionnaires about their leaders. On the questionnaires, followers had to identify the number of times their leaders engaged in certain types of behavior. The original questionnaire used in these studies was constructed from a list of more than 1,800 items describing different aspects of leader behavior. From this long list of items, a questionnaire composed of 150 questions was formulated. It was called the Leader Behavior Description Questionnaire, the LBDQ, the Hemphill and Coons, 1957. The LBDQ was given to hundreds of people in educational, military, industrial settings, and results showed that certain clusters of behaviors were typical of leaders. 6 years later, Stockdale in 63 explored or published a shortened version of the LBDQ. The new form, which was called the LBDQ, probably 12, Roman numeral X and 11, right, became the most widely used instrument in leadership research. A questionnaire similar to the LBDQ, which you can use to assess your own leadership behavior, appears later in this chapter. Researchers found that followers' responses on the questionnaires clustered around two general types of leader behaviors: initiating structure and consideration, Stockdale 74. Initiating structure behaviors are essentially task behaviors, including such acts as organizing work, giving structure to the work context, defining role responsibilities, and scheduling work activities. Consideration behaviors are essentially relationship behaviors and include building camaraderie, respect, trust, and liking between leaders and followers. The two types of behaviors identified by the LBDQ-12 represent the core of the behavioral approach and are central to what leaders do. Leaders provide structure for followers and they nurture them. The Ohio State studies viewed these two behaviors as distinct and independent. They were thought of not as 2 points along a single continuum, but as different continua. For example, a leader can be high in initiating structure and high or low in task behavior. Similarly, a leader can be low in setting structure and low or high in consideration behaviors. The degree to which a leader exhibits one behavior is not related to the degree to which she or he exhibits other behaviors. Many studies have been done to determine which leadership behavior is most effective in a particular situation. In some contexts, high consideration has been found to be most effective, but in other situations, high initiation structure is most effective. Some research has shown that being high in both behaviors is the best form of leadership. Determining how a leader optimally mixes task and relationship behaviors has been the central task for researchers from the behavioral approach. The path, goal approach, which is discussed in Chapter 6, exemplifies a leadership theory that attempts to explain how leaders should integrate consideration and structure into their behaviors. Finishing on page 75, so that's pretty much 73 through 75, behavioral approach. That's the Ohio State studies, finishing on page 75. See ya.